This is TechNOW. I'm your host, John Reid, also CEO of CATA Alliance. And I'm very pleased to have with me today Tariq Habib, the Group CEO of VoiceTrust, on a very important subject, something that we've been asked about, call centers. What are the trends? What are the best practices? How do you get that good customer experience? So, Tariq, you're the expert. Can you share with us some insights?
Thank you, John, for the time today. Yes, indeed, call centers are going through a very interesting transformation by adopting new technologies and coming up with more and more user-friendly interaction for their customers. And if you look at some of the top trends for call centers, one of the topmost trend is using voice technology, which is very kind of inherent to the call center business itself, and using it not only to interact with the users on the other side, but also to identify and authenticate them online. So it really solves a lot of problems that call centers faces in terms of identifying and authenticating users and bringing in a lot of user-friendliness into the whole call center space.
Well, if someone were to look at a risk that people are running with call centers today, I'm a business executive. I'm setting up a call center. What should I pay attention to? What's my exposure of doing things wrong?
Let's look at it from a bigger context. There are a couple of things that call centers are facing. One of the major issues that call centers are facing is differentiation. So there is a lot of move. In fact, a recent study by Forrester tells us that 80% of call centers are interested to adopt something that differentiates them into this whole space. So there is a lot of move in terms of differentiating their services and their standing in a very crowded space. And one of the most important thing in this space is to be able to differentiate through identification of the users in a very natural sense. So instead of really, asking you when you were born and where you were born, those kind of very uninteresting questions, it would be very natural that through our conversation as we are talking right now, the system should be able to identify that this is John on the line, not someone else. And if this can be done in just few seconds, it's not only brings in the convenience that we need, but it also brings in a lot of efficiency that call centers really need at this time. If you look at Gartner's study that shows us that use of voice biometrics in identifying users would basically shorten the conversation by an average of 30 seconds. And that's a huge saving for call centers. And that really adds up to the bottom line. So that goes to what you just asked me. And also, yes, you wanted to ask me something?
No, I'm saying that's a big productivity boost. If you look at high usage, for a company to be 30 seconds more efficient is a significant return on investment for doing it right.
Absolutely. If you look at the numbers, just in US alone, it's a $12 billion spent on user identification and authentication by call centers. It's a huge number. So if use of technologies like voice biometric can solve, this identification problem and bring this number down by a couple of seconds, that translates into savings in billions of dollars. So it's not just savings, it's also the user convenience, as I just mentioned. So it becomes very natural conversation. It's not really something that I, kind of dread to go through, but it's a very easy and a user-friendly conversation. So it really affects positively the call center space from a number of angles. And it's just,
and I guess just to add, I'm thinking again of the perspective of I'm just setting up a call center. I'm very concerned with my brand. And of course, now the impact of social media, that's a big difference. You can have a positive impact with your call center, or you can have a negative impact, and all that becomes much more at risk with the pervasiveness of social media.
That's true. It's more and more, kind of substitution that's coming up through the use of new technologies and new medias, and it really brings in the need to differentiate the call center space, in a bigger sense. And just a few more quick pointers to how voice biometrics really works in this, or can work in this space. And if you look at the technology, that essentially is in two areas. One area is known as text independent, where the two parties are just interacting in a natural sense. Any content, and the system is listening in the back and trying to show the correlation of an already stored pattern to the pattern that is being read to this conversation. So it's really something that is very natural. We call it passive listening. So there is no interruption, and the call center agent will see on the screen what is the level of authentication, and in just in a matter of few seconds, it might show a color red or green. Green means all set to go, and transaction can go through. Transaction could be very huge transaction. In case of bank, it could be millions of dollars being wired. So the level of trust and confidence that comes up through this biometric technology is really unparalleled. There is no other biometric technology that can be deployed on call centers because it's just phone and conversation. So voice becomes very natural from that angle. And text independent is the way to go in call centers in a large sense. What we have done in VoiceTrust is a unique kind of mixing of text independent and more traditional text dependent in something known as hybrid verification. And that is really the new trend of deploying this technology in call centers on a large scale basis. So if you ask me how you see this going forward this year and the next year, I would say watch out this space of hybrid verification and a kind of split of text dependent and independent in a way that brings in more and more value to the end users.
Well, Tariq, I know we're going to be attaching some key white papers, briefing papers for our community. This has been a very helpful interview, but I should at least give you, a few seconds to tell us a little bit about VoiceTrust. I mean, you are the expert. Who is VoiceTrust, and what's its mandate?
VoiceTrust, very briefly, was initially established like early 2000 in Munich as a small startup. It went through its own success by creating a technology subset in the whole biometric space and created an application of password reset automation in an enterprise. We bought this company a couple of years before, retransformed, recreated the entire technology, made it a Canadian outfit. So it's basically a Canadian startup out of Toronto for the last couple of years. We have the most comprehensive technology that covers text independent, and the new formation, as I just mentioned, the hybrid verification process. And we have a very interesting exclusive partnership with one of the leading research centers in speech technologies out of Montreal by the name Crane. That gives us access to one of the top minds in the pure research area, that also provides us the kind of bandwidth to tackle some of the issues that the industry and the users are facing and will face in future, and how that will actually translate into some useful products over time. So what we are creating here in Toronto is something that is not just meaningful to the call center space, but to a much larger space that covers the enterprise, healthcare, government-to-person payments such as proof of life, and many more to come in future. So it's really an exciting time and a lot of work for us, but I'm excited.
Well, it warms my heart that this investment is coming to Canada, has come to Canada, and a key area for businesses to be aware of, to understand the ins and the outs. So again, the white papers will be posted. Tariq Habib, Group CEO of VoiceTrust, thank you for joining TechNOW this morning, and we look forward to many more conversations with you.
Thank you.